Greetings in the name of our Lord. I hope that all of you are well wherever you are and striving on in the struggle against the COVID pandemic that adds on the challenges that we have always grappled with. I come to you today to clarify a few things regarding what is going on in Uganda's political arena. There has been a lot of activity in the last week and still going on. The political temperature is indeed warming up, and we are seeing a lot of movements. And there is indeed a lot of anxiety in the country as to where all this leads. So first, I would like to comment on what appears to me, frankly, to be a very choreographed attack on the Forum for Democratic Change, and indeed on my person, in the political processes that are going on. There is, in fact, a very clearly deliberate effort to depict FDC as a party in total disarray, in a complete meltdown, in turmoil, and headed for extinction. There is equally a cultivated impression that I am at the center, I am the reason, I am the cause of what is going on in the Forum for Democratic Change. And therefore, I would like to make comments in this regard more especially. I will make comments in other areas, but more so in this regard. And I would like to, first and foremost, re-emphasize, underline, underscore the point that we have been making over and over again, that Uganda is not a multi-party democracy, that Uganda does not have a political party system running the state, that in fact Uganda remains firmly a military junta, a military regime. You will recall that since Uganda became a state, since Uganda became one entity, the people of Uganda have never had influence in how it is run and who runs it. In the first of all, Uganda was created by the force of the colonial powers, which destroyed our naturally evolving nations and created a new and artificial one called Uganda. And that is why our communities are divided amongst the different countries that surround us. You'll find Ugandans and Sudanese of the same family. In fact, even now, we have a minister in Uganda and his sister a minister in the Sudan. We have had a minister in Uganda and his brother a vice president of Kenya. This is an artificial entity created by the force of the colonists, who ruled Uganda by force for 70 years, up to 1962. Since 1962 up to today, in 2020, no leader has ever been in office in our country because people have said so. No leader has left the seat of power because people have said so. Whoever did so by force of arms. So the power in Uganda is under the control of guns. The current establishment led by Mr. Museveni or General Museveni, however you may want to refer to him, was established by the National Resistance Army through the proclamation of Legal Notice Number 1, 1986, where the NRA proclaims the takeover of power. And up to now, the NRM, which received power from the NRA, runs Uganda on that basis. Our struggle for multi-party democracy since NRM came into office made just a slight advance through the 2005 changes in the law to allow political parties to form and to function. But whereas there was a change in the law, there was no change in the status that was there. That's why NRM, in fact, does not refer to itself as a political party. It still calls itself a multi-ideological movement, it remained continuing as it was, purging those who did not agree with it. You cannot have a multi-party dispensation when you do not have the rule of law. The rule of law requires that all are equal under the law. The rule of law requires that all state institutions are accountable to the people. It requires that you have independent institutions of state. And it requires that there is security for all, equal security for all. We have seen, indeed, even the institution of the judiciary attacked in broad daylight, not once, not twice. You cannot talk about having the rule of law. You cannot have a multi-party political system when there is no observance of human rights and freedoms. In other words, when the right to associate, the basis of which political parties exist, is not respected. When the rights to assemble as required in a multi-party dispensation are not respected. When the rights of speech, the rights to work, the rights to express oneself, the right of the media to function independently, when all these are not respected, you cannot have a multi-party dispensation. So, it's evaluation of what is going on in the country today on the basis of political parties that function normally is fundamentally flawed. And I am extremely disappointed that especially the political elite, including the academia, do not focus on that we are under the control of of military power. Now, having said that, my second point is again to underscore how the use of force maintains control over millions of people in a country for a long time. When they have no freedom, when they have no rights, how do the people who control force control a country? Again, we have been explaining that it is through 4 processes. The first one is to cause and instill extreme fear among the population through the use of terror, state terror, like indeed recently you have been seeing during the COVID pandemic, the LDUs dispensing all over the country. The use of terror to cause fear in the hearts of those that they dominate. Secondly, the control, the exclusive control of wealth of a country. Whoever controls power controls wealth. The British controlled Uganda for 70 years, not for anything else but to extract and take away our wealth, to control the wealth of Uganda. So all these military juntas, their main reason for continuing to control the country is to control its wealth and determine how it is used. And in the current instance, Mr. Museveni has exclusively controlled the wealth of Uganda for now 35 years. Half the time the British were here. He's already been here controlling all our wealth. And indeed that's why he freely brags that he has his oil, he has all the money is his, whoever wants, he has many rooms in his house, he can give you whatever you want. He controls all our wealth and has done so for 35 years. Now that wealth is used to control people, and especially to control the elites. Controlling wealth is a huge tool and lever that is used to control the elites. Because elites, people who have gone to school, who have acquired some skills and have a lot of information, they also have high expectations of the type of life they would like to live. They want to live a comfortable life. And living a comfortable life in a country whose wealth is controlled by one person will only derive that comfort at the permission of that one person. So, whatever is going on today and has been going on all these years must be viewed in light of who controls the resources. And I will revert to that a little later in this engagement. The third thing that any group that dominates the country uses is dominating the flow of information, control of information, so that the people can only hear what the one with power wants them to hear, and will not be allowed to hear alternative views. So again, what has been happening throughout these 35 years and even before must be viewed in light of that. What information is available to the population? why can't I be allowed on a radio station, except those in Kampala, even for 10 minutes? To be on a radio station, the police, the army would have come. And they won't give the slightest explanation within the law why they are acting as they are. Because even the unfair laws that have been enacted by the NRM regime are not wide enough to explain why I cannot speak on radio. They say we shouldn't hold meetings because there is a law called public order management. But there is no law whatsoever that can be relied on to stop anybody to speak on the radio. But they will do anything, whether it is within the law or outside the law, to stop the population hearing views that they don't want them to hear. They create a gate to stop information. And on the flip side, on the other side, they bombard the population with what they want the population to hear. Propaganda. They bombard the population with either outrightly incorrect information or skewed, stilted information to create the impression they want to create. And that propaganda is partly what we are dealing with even in this time. That propaganda intensifies during periods of elections. It becomes intense, a lot of misinformation and causing confusion to the minds of the population. But this is the third area in which our people are dominated. The fourth area that is used by all people that monopolize power of countries is to divide the people that are under their control. And in fact, not only to divide them, but to cause conflicts among them that will divert the attention of the people from the one dominating them to the secondary contradictions that are created within the population. So you'll find tribe turned against tribe, religion turned against religion, farmers turned against traders, all kinds of the divisions are created within the population, and each one starts looking at the other with suspicion, or even thinking indeed that they are their enemies. And the one dominating all of them then is scot-free from scrutiny by all these people that are conflicting amongst themselves. And that's why unity amongst the dominated is a huge problem. That is why even unity within any formation, whether it's a religious formation, it will be divided. Even one religion cannot be allowed to be harmonious within its organization, because that becomes a strong power base. If the Muslims are united, that is a strong power. So Muslims must not be allowed to be united. Christians must not be allowed to unite, must conflict, and so on. When it comes to political organizations, then the target becomes even sharper, because political organizations are formed to precisely tackle those who are dominating the country. And therefore, what you see in the political organizations that we have is a direct consequence of the means that are used by all dictatorships to maintain power. They will attack any form of political organization, even non-political, but more so the political ones are most attacked to break them up so that they do not focus on ending the domination that there is. That is why it's not surprising that all the political parties in Uganda have been emasculated through internal wrangles and rivalries and divided. In Uganda today, it's common knowledge that some are referred to as good DP, bad DP. You have good FDC, bad FDC. You have good UPC, good UPC, bad UPC. And the reason all these come up, indeed, in our case, you'll find that those who are referred to as good, and they, create nice attributes to them. These are people who give credit where it is due, who are not violent, who are, appreciate the need for dialogue, working together, whom the dictatorship can work with. What does it mean? It simply means, in ordinary language, that those are walking sticks of the junta, of the dominant force within these organizations. And any serious formation, whether it is called a political party, whether it's called a pressure group, by whatever name it is called, if there is any serious organization intended to fight for the freedom of the people of Uganda to live under the rule of law, to enjoy all rights, to have equal opportunities, any person or organization, however small, who pursues that genuinely and effectively becomes enemy of the state, number one, without doubt. And so these four approaches of any dominant force in a country, forceful control of a country, any group in forceful control of the country, wherever it is, whether it was the apartheid South Africa, whether it's the post-independence African states that are still controlled by autocratic regimes, these four approaches will be found there without any question. So, first, understand that we are not in a democratic multi-party dispensation. Second, understand that the military junta that controls Uganda employs those approaches, four approaches, to maintain control of power in Uganda. Now, the FDC arose right from its inception, even before the FDC actually. the reform agenda, what was called the reform agenda, when we opposed the movement system, because at that time, even in law and constitution, no parties were allowed to form. And we challenged that in 2001. And some of us obviously had been with Mr. Museveni throughout the Bush War. Even before the Bush War, we understood his orientation, and we understood his betrayal of the struggle that we had been engaged in. So he knew very well that we are focused on stopping his abuse of the struggle of the people of Uganda and freeing ourselves and freeing the country. He understood that right from the time we started opposing him publicly. And that's why, you know, in my case, he first worked hard to court-martial me, just like he has done to many of his colleagues that have challenged him. And the struggle began. And those who may have been around for a little long to know where, you know, that time was, we remember the ominous words that were used in respect of what I was doing. They said, "We shall isolate you and crush you." Isolate and crush. These are two things, cardinal things, that have been going on since that time. Isolate and crush. And part of the isolation process is to make sure that leaders that you work together as a team are, you know, isolated from you so that you remain alone. In fact, even before, as I have said, before FDC, that is exactly what happened as we left the NRM. It was only the Honorable Sam Kaleganjuba who managed to withstand the intimidation, the terror, and the attendant procurement, buying of renting of support as one of the senior leaders to come along. Otherwise, the struggle of reform agenda was undertaken by ordinary souls in Uganda, not the prominent leaders in the country, ordinary people. Many of them, I had no knowledge who they were, but they were desirous of change. They formed themselves into groups. They formed committees. They worked, they invested their money without my knowledge or even interaction with at any stage. So, I would like Ugandans to know that in the struggle for freedom in Uganda, there are two dynamics. There are the ordinary Ugandans who bear the worst brunt of the domination, who are most exploited, who are most marginalized, isolated, excluded, who don't get services at all, but who pay high taxes, who have no say. You know? Just like today, what you see, every police station is teeming with boda-bodas that have been impounded from young, poor citizens that work 24 hours to put food on their table, that risk their lives 24 hours. If you go to the hospitals, the injuries that are there are immense, but they continue to run to get something to eat. Those are the biggest victims of the system. The low echelons, the low people that, you know, what in Uganda is known as muntu wa bulijo, muntu wa wansi. These are the people who feel the brunt of the system of domination. They are the ones who have the most to get from liberation, and they will fight in every way to be liberated. But the leaders are always prone, because they want to get a good life, and they are few, so it is possible for the people dominating the country to procure, to rent their support, give them what they need. They support the domination. This one supports their easy life so that they can, have some cars and move around and enjoy a beer and some pork and things like that, while the domination continues. So this divergence amongst the dominated, and this is not just in the political class, it is in all leadership strata, whether it is in the religious organizations, whether it is in the business, whether it is in the media, whether it is, you'll find the top people compromised as the low people perish in terrible, including the security. The ordinary policeman, if you go to Zambia and you see where policemen sleep, you can cry. It's where they sleep with their families, Some mabati just hammered on sticks, inside there. I don't even know how they sleep, because on a hot day, it will be like an oven inside there. On a cold day, it will be like a fridge. How they sleep there with their families, you can't even know, This is how, that's the same with the UPDF, the law. It's only the ones at the top that are co-opted into the easy life by those who dominate. So, our struggle in the FDC, right from the beginning, must be understood in that light. That we have the struggle of the ordinary people that want freedom, and we have the participation of the elites. By the way, even in the Bush War that brought Mr. Museveni, it was fought by the ordinary people of Ruwero and other places, but mainly ordinary people of Ruwero, of Mpigi, of Mubende, of Chivoga, and so on. Ordinary people. The elites were not there. The few that were educated and were in the bush, in fact, were treated as a special group. Again, they were there as a special group. And they were known as intellectuals. They were a special group. But the brunt of the fighting, the people who fought and won the war in Ruwero were ordinary people. That war still continues. The ordinary people are still marginalized, suffering. So even as we create organizations through which to struggle, this dynamic should not be forgotten. That we have the rest of the population and some leaders. Most of the time, most of the leaders looking for comfort. That is the unfortunate, bitter truth. Most of the time, most of the leaders looking for where it is comfortable. If FDC struggle offers them hope to become that comfortable and to access comfort, they are with it. If somebody else attracts them with that, they will go. Their purpose is not liberation. I say most, not all, certainly. There are quite a number of elites that devote everything, sacrifice everything to cause change, to which I have the greatest honor and respect. But I beg your pardon, the greatest majority are fortune seekers. And you have heard me before say that the hottest part of hell awaits these elites because they betray the country, they betray their people. They get advantage of getting skills, of getting education through the support of those ordinary people. Most of our elites, their families are peasant families, including Mr. Museveni, of course, who, if it was not the state, would never have seen the inside of a university. If Mr. Museveni was in school during his role in the situation he has created, there is no way he would ever have gone to university, never. So people sacrifice to create the elites, but the elites are so selfish, they don't want to sacrifice to pull those who sacrificed on their behalf out of the misery. And that is the story of FDC. So, in FDC, or even the reform agenda before it, many people have sacrificed and continue to sacrifice to this day. Leaders come in and leave according to convenience. They do. They come in, some get something, some don't get anything, they leave. Quite often for where it is possible to get what they want. And so, what is happening in the country today cannot be understood without that background. That to fight domination. And to that extent, the people embraced it. The reason the people of Uganda embraced, there are many parties, the reason they embraced the message of FDC is that FDC purposes liberation and will do so fearlessly. Fight for liberation. People understand that and rally around that. And I'm sure people also understand the opportunistic nature of many amongst us. They do. And that's why, these migrations have not started today, but they have never affected the people of Uganda and their zeal for their liberation. Never been affected. Now, FDC, having posed the biggest danger to the military junta the military junta focused all its arsenal, all its guns on FDC. So FDC has been, and myself, because don't forget, isolate and crush. So you want to isolate those who are fighting and crush them. Crush FDC, crush those stubborn people. And, so FDC has had the greatest attack in terms of propaganda, the greatest attack in terms of focusing resources to compromise our people, the greatest attack in terms of, the divide and rule, in infiltration and divide and rule, and it's expected, It's the potent that gets attacked. As the saying goes, the mango tree with mangoes is the one that will get the most hits. If in a mango tree there are no mangoes, nobody will throw a stone at that tree or a stick. So I think the attack on FDC should give people who are in FDC comfort that what we are doing is potent, creates a threat to those who dominate us. And they will attack us with anything and everything. We must prepare ourselves. That's why we call it a struggle. It's a war. It's definitely a war. And we must prepare. And the war tends to become most intense towards the end, because then it's a matter of life and death. The NRM has been weakened. The NRM junta has been weakened tremendously. It is fighting now for its life by everything that it can have. And COVID has exposed them, has exposed that they have no more anything called an economy. They don't have any reserve in the bank. They don't have any reserve of anything, whether it is food, whether it is anything. They don't have anything. That they have no capacity to maintain services in the country. Everything they do now must be a wait, first of all, to borrow. That is what COVID has shown. So it's on its knees. The NRM is on its knees. And in order to survive, they will throw everything at us. We must simply prepare ourselves. So, people who are leaving FDC for one reason or another, if you want to gauge the state of politics in Uganda, you don't go there. Gauge the state of the people at the bottom, not the state of people where the highest Brownian, in science it was called Brownian motion, where there is heat and everybody is flying in all kinds of direction. Look at the bottom. That's where you will know whether Mr. Museveni and his mafias are safe or not. You will only know it by going to Chikubo, by talking to the Batembe, talking to the Boda. That's when you will know. Not the MPs. Therefore, what our struggle is now must remain focused. Our struggle is for liberation, not for contestation of office. Again, our elites totally miss that. They think the struggle at hand is to contest who becomes a president. It's not. Anybody who is that inclined is lost. You can't become a president when you have no country to be a president of. The country is captive, is captured. Its institutions, all the institutions in Uganda are institutions of Mr. Museveni, whether you like it or not. The Bank of Uganda is the Bank of Museveni, which he uses as he wants. The courts, apart from appointing all 100% of the judges, it has been attacked by forces several times and brought down to its knees, the courts. So you can't run to the court. Parliament, you saw the forces, army in parliament, attacking the seat of the people of Uganda. If there is anything called treason, an attack on parliament must be the utmost treason that anybody can do. Because power in Uganda belongs to the people, and they exercise it through their representatives in parliament. We saw Museveni attack parliament in order to gain a legitimate appearance on a ballot paper, because he was no longer entitled to be a candidate in this election. So, the struggle at hand, certainly the struggle in which I am involved, is not a struggle to gain an office. Because all the offices today are in the junta. In fact, that is part of the problem with the people who serve in the junta offices. Because if you are an MP, FDC MP, first of all, to become an MP, you need hundreds of millions. Again, the monetization of politics that I talked about. Anybody to be elected, you need a lot of money to pay your way till you are elected. So people who get into parliament all arrive with tons of debts. They have huge loans, money lenders, what, everybody is hunting for them. Even as they stay in parliament, now the country calls them ATM machines. Because at the doorsteps of parliament, everybody from their constituencies is waiting for them. Those who need money for burial, those who have been chased from schools, those who are fundraising for churches, those who are chased out of houses, they have no rent. Everybody is at the doorsteps waiting for those MPs. Now it has been made worse by COVID. Everybody has no food. And you must have seen my friend Ibrahim Semujunganda cry during COVID. He said, I will take 20 billion because these people can't leave my gate. And he was right. That is the reality of the people who work in that parliament. The only way they can stay there is again for Museveni to keep on giving them money. Otherwise, even though they are the most highly paid public servants maybe in Uganda, that money is nothing compared to the demands on the MPs. Many of the MPs have zero as their balance on salary every month. They don't get paid anything because all the money they have already committed is to loans. Go and see their pay slip. Many get zero and yet have demands outside waiting for them. So the MPs are the most vulnerable people. In fact, not only MPs, all political leaders in political offices are the most vulnerable people. Whether they are councillors, whether they are chairman of this or that, they are all in problems. And their only possible line of survival is the controller of money who gives. That is the basic problem. So people enter parliament when they are struggleists. After a short time, they are all speaking Rhodesia. That is the reality of our situation. And that's why I think in the case of FDC, there is a contradiction between members of parliament, many members of parliament, and the party. I'm sure it will be the same even in other places. It's not a unique thing for FDC. That is also why most of all those MPs, in spite of all they do, they never become re-elected to come back. They are thrown out. So, the struggle of this country for liberation is not a struggle to enter jobs in the junta at any level, including the presidency. I am not in this struggle certainly to become the president of Uganda. That's not what motivates me to be in this struggle. I have never set out to aspire to offices as a goal. Never in my life. I went through my education period without ever seeking any office of any kind and without ever occupying any. I didn't go to the bush to seek an office. I am not holding any public office today. I was chosen to be a leader of FDC. I led it for some time and stepped aside. Even to lead FDC, I was persuaded from South Africa to come. I was not here. And I was not, hankering to become a leader of FDC. I was persuaded by the leaders who were here to come back. Persuaded. Who came twice, including Geno Muntu, who now has his party, but they all came to persuade me to come. I served FDC for a short while and stepped aside. So my purpose in the political struggles of Uganda is not to occupy any office. My purpose is to participate in processes that can lead to liberation of the country, so that we live in a country that is governed under the rule of law, where there is scrupulous observance of human rights, where we have state institutions that are independent and competent and serve all people equitably, where we have equal opportunities. That is my mission as a person. It is our collective mission, those of us who are struggling, whether within the FDC, whether within the United Forces of Change, in whatever formation. That is my pursuit. When I stepped down from the FDC, I informed the FDC leadership very transparently that I believed the struggle we are engaged in required broader participation in than just FDC. In other words, FDC is a wonderful platform for liberation. It's focused on liberation. It has an agenda that even goes beyond liberation in terms of policy platform. But for the purposes of bringing down the dictatorship and having a transition, my view was that we needed broader unity than FDC. And as an FDC leader, I could not be helpful in generating or inspiring people to make that broad. It was clear I was not stepping down from struggle. I was availing myself to struggle without the constraints of the party, so that we can rally greater support for the struggle than just a partisan support. And that is what we tried to do from 2012, when I stepped down as leader of FDC, until 2016. I had no intention of participating in another election in 2016, and I had said so. It was special circumstances that evolved that we thought were dangerous for the very struggle we were engaged in, that compelled me to seek a flag of FDC so that we could use it in the elections for struggle, not against the struggle, because there was a danger of having a dynamic that would undermine the struggle. And it was again not because we thought that that election would somehow lead to the announcement that those who hold Uganda by force were going to leave. It wasn't. It was so that we simply galvanize the country and continue the struggle. And in that election, if anybody listened to our message in 2016, I was very clearly telling the people of Uganda that I had not come to the election to seek their vote, because I was persuaded they had no vote. A vote is a power to decide, which the people of Uganda today don't have. That's what we are fighting for. And I said, I want to appeal to you that we work together to fight to regain our influence in the country. And that's why we are organizing Power 10. So this struggle we are engaged in has 3 steps that we have to go through. The first one is to intensify the awareness of the people of Uganda, which, as I told you much earlier, is not easy because there are roadblocks to communicating to the people of Uganda. But that's one thing that we must overcome. We must have conscious, aware, active citizens, however we get them. And we must be very creative in getting that information out there. Secondly, we must organize for struggle. Organizing for struggle is a bit different from organizing for just elections. Organizing for struggle includes, first of all, uniting everybody, not just partisan platforms, but uniting everybody, which is why you hear us talk about united forces of change. We need to unite everybody. Secondly, we need to have leadership networks of 2 types: those that are seen and those that are not seen. Because those that are seen are entirely vulnerable to the junta, as I explained earlier. They will be intimidated, they will be bribed, they will be, arrested. All kinds of things can happen to those who are seen that will weaken the struggle if they are the only ones you are relying on. So we need leaders who are seen and those who are not seen. The ones who are seen are the ones who will climb the platform and say, I have changed. I am no longer in the struggle. I have seen the light. Now I'm supporting the junta. Those are the leaders who are seen. So those are the leaders that the struggle needs, but should not be the only ones, should not be the ones they rely on. We must have leaders that are not seen. And that's what the people's government or even before the people's government, what we were building right from 2012. Those who are not seen are not of any particular party. Some may be DP, some may be UPC, some may be no parties, but they are leaders for liberation. And that's their focus. They must be developed, they must be trained on what a struggle of this type means and how it comes to an end. They must be trained for struggle. It's different from when you are training people for the election, for voting. You train them how to manage a polling station and so on. This is a different struggle. So you need a different type of leader and a different type of training. And that's what we have been involved in since 2012. And that's why the election of 2016 was a bit different. It was inspired by those leaders. Though it did not achieve the ultimate goal of liberating the country through that election, but the dynamics for it were different. We continued following on 2016 through the people's government. And that's why the people's government is not just FDC, as some people would like to portray. The vice president of the people's government, the Honorable Salongo Elias Lukwago, has never been a member of FDC up to date. The other leaders that we work with, Ken Ruchamuzi, the Nambos, the Kasivantes, and all these people that we work with, they are not members of FDC. And that is, and we don't require them to be members. We don't have to be in any particular group to struggle. So we are in a different kind of a struggle than what Mr. Museveni would like us to be in his election, according to the roadmap of his electoral commission. That is nonsense. That's not what, we don't move according to their dictates. We move according to our own plans, for our own goals, not for their goals. Unfortunately, many in Uganda, especially the usual suspects, the elites, don't seem to get it, that there are two different struggles here. The artificial struggle, the artificial engagement of an election that is created by Mr. Museveni, and the struggle for the liberation of the people of Uganda. We are pursuing the struggle for the liberation of the people of Uganda, whether there is an election or not, whether there is COVID or not. Rule of Uganda by guns must end. That's the mission, to end the rule by guns, so that guns are subordinate, are subject, are under the control of ordinary people. That's the struggle. The transition, that's why we talk endlessly about a transition. We must have a transition from gun rule to people rule. That's the transition. Not from Museveni to another person. It's from gun rule to people rule, whether Museveni is there or not. Because Museveni can collapse anytime. Doesn't mean the struggle is over. Those with guns will maintain the power. So the struggle is not fixed, it's not around Museveni, it's around the whole idea of power being controlled by guns. The reason, indeed, even before Museveni, power only changed through guns. It will happen even after Museveni, power will continue to change through guns. That must stop. That is the fight we have to do. It's a fight that must be engaged in by all the people of Uganda, who must understand that unless we win that war, we won't control the resources of Uganda. Our people will remain poor, will remain without services, will remain terrorized by the few people who control power. That's why it's important that everybody wake up and we unite. So that's why in this election, I have made it extremely clear that I don't want anymore the possibility of whether the junta or its confused allies projecting the struggle as if it's a struggle between Besigye and Museveni, or Besigye and so on. So that confusion, I don't want it to persist in this election. I want every opportunity to arise in this election where the front of the struggle is clear, where the lines are clear, that there is gun rule and the people this side. Not Besigye or the other one, confuse, continue, divide again, use the opportunity of our leadership in the struggle to divide the people of Uganda and deny us the opportunity to liberate our country. If that means not being a candidate in the fake election, so be it. I will not allow my name to be used or abused in dividing the people of Uganda in the struggle. What we are doing away from the cameras, and we believe that it has the best chance away from the cameras, because as I have pointed out, the junta dominates the cameras and uses. Yeah, so we must, especially the leadership groups of platforms that inspire liberation, we need to have intensive consultations with a clear trajectory of what we want to do. And the clear trajectory should be first to rally together. That is the first critical thing, rally together. If, the rivalries in our platforms are a problem, we see how to solve that, because that is always a problem. There are always rivalries within the platforms, mainly of the leaders who are seeking to gain some office here and there. That is a major drawback to uniting platforms. And we are intensively engaging to see how to rally together, mitigate that weakness, see how to reduce the weakness of fighting for offices. And this is why I am saying in my case, I won't allow at all myself and maybe whatever offices people are talking about becoming an issue. Not at all. Let's look at the country. Let's look at what will generate maximum unity for fighting. The unity must be unity for fighting in whatever form, whether through the election or outside the election. We shall not liberate this country without a fight. It won't happen. So we must unite for a fight. It's a fight that will bring back our country. And we can fight through their program or outside it. We should not be controlled by their program. Museveni can go. If we unite, Museveni can go even before nomination day. There is nothing that stops our. Why should we subject our country that we are waiting for 21 in order to have this terrible situation end? It does not make sense at all. Every day leaves many people dead. Every day. Young, the ones who are born in the childbirth because of having no proper care for mothers, the ones who die of hunger, the ones who die of disease, the ones who die on these borders, and this cannot be allowed to go on beyond what is absolutely necessary. So we cannot pin our agenda on the Byabakama roadmap. Byabakama and his Museveni roadmap, that we pin our agenda on that program, that's nonsense. Our program must be to liberate our country, whether there is Byabakama, whether there is Museveni, whether there is a junta or not. And that will take, first of all, uniting ourselves. So our agenda, our own agenda, must first be, let's unite. At all costs, let's unite. That's the first agenda. The second agenda is to prepare ourselves on how we fight. And we have very clear ideas on how to do this. Very, very clear ideas. That it won't, if we are united and organized, it won't take even a week to change the situation here. We can change it. Third, and most important, that then once the junta falls, how to organize the transition from the gun rule to people rule. That is a delicate process, an extremely important process, which once has been concretized is irreversible. So we must organize a transition, manage a transition. And in managing a transition, we must have an idea of what it is that must change. If we are saying we are forces of change, united forces of change, what is it that must change? It must be very clear in our minds. And we must have a time frame within which that change takes place. As clockwork, that on the first day this will change, on the second day that will change, on the third day that will change. So that the hungry person on the street who is fighting for change can also have a clear idea how his life will change, his or her life will change. If I have no food, how will the change get food to me? And when? So we need to have our own clear agenda, transition agenda. Lined out very, very clearly. In a form that is not capable of causing doubt of what will happen when. Very clear. Once that transition must end with having a free and fair election. Because we shall never have a free and fair election or anywhere near it under the junta. That is out. So this struggle culminates, closes, if you like, at having a free and fair election, which marks the end of a transition. And then, hopefully, you are in a democratic dispensation, where, as I have said, guns are totally subordinate to people, and that leaders then are servants, people are masters. That is the other transition that comes with that. Leaders become servants, people become masters. And that is a whole revolution. Then you will never see, where people are transitioning the masters. That will never happen. People become in charge. Parliament becomes supreme organ of state, because that's where all the power of the people is united. A president is just a servant. And as you see, in democratic countries, you see a prime minister on a bicycle riding to work. You don't need convoys of military people escorting, here even escorting RDC. You have RDC escorted by guns, MPs escorted by guns, and even non-entities who are related to the king, who is Museveni, escorted by guns, his relatives, that must end. That will be the end of this struggle. That is what I wake up every day to advance. And by the grace of God, I think we are getting there. Me, I look at COVID as God sent, actually. I think God has seen our suffering in this country. He has seen how all our attempts previously in elections, in what have been, totally subverted. And I think God this time decided to make a direct intervention in Uganda. I don't think that what we have seen, the locusts attacking the country, is something mild to ignore. We have never had locusts here in our lifetime. Locusts came, just like the biblical locusts attacking the pharaohs of Egypt. We've seen floods that have not been evidenced here since the early 1960s. And in fact, have gone beyond what was evidenced in 1960s. We've seen, the hunger that is hitting the country. Now, COVID that has shut down everything. The ones who killed our healthcare are now stranded here. They can't, if they are sick, they can't even go to Kenya. They are stranded, except of course the few who are at the very top. So these are, I think, great signs of events that we have no control over. They are now still talking about scientific election. We don't know even where this COVID is going. We don't know. It could cause even more problems. And even the scientific election may. All this panic is there because it is only the office of Mr. Museveni which is threatened. Only. Parliament can be extended. The only thing that cannot be extended according to our constitution is the office of Mr. Museveni. Only. And that's why there is all this panic, have an election of any kind so that Mr. Museveni can be announced as a president again. Because otherwise he has no avenue in the constitution, short of now taking over openly with his forces. He has no avenue constitutionally to become president on the 13th of May next year. He would not be president constitutionally. Everything else in government can be extended by law. Local governments, parliament, everything else can be extended. It's only his office that cannot be extended, hence all this panic. But he's contending with God. We will see where it ends. because I think this is now, I see it as a direct divine, some kind of divine intervention. So, in a nutshell, I've talked many things, and I think I needed to say these many things. We are on our own trajectory for liberation. This trajectory needs a united forces of change. And we must do everything within our power to rally all Ugandans, not necessarily leaders. As I have said, leaders have their own issues, and I will not be surprised. You know, the movement has already appointed many brokers to buy support. In every region there is already a broker and so on. So I will not be surprised seeing leaders on platforms here and there. But we must rally the people of Uganda into the greatest force of change that we can marshal. And we must end military rule. Most preferably this year, not next year. It's possible, we can do it, and we should aim at doing it. The rest we are doing quietly. We don't want as yet to discuss the details of how we move in the media. I thank you. God bless you.